We are in a better position now, and I am grateful for that. The debt is gone. The final payment is gone. There is breathing room in the household again. And after a long season of pressure, that feels like a real blessing. But I am also learning something about this stage of the journey. Better does not mean ready. Just because things are better does not mean the foundation is fully rebuilt. Just because there is breathing room does not mean every next goal should start immediately. Just because the pressure has dropped does not mean the household is ready to run into every exciting thing that now feels possible. Hi, I'm JP, and in the last episode, I spoke about giving breathing room its first job. For us, that first job is rebuilding the emergency buffer. The buffer was used. It did what it was supposed to do. It protected us from turning real-life expenses into new debt. And now, because the car payment is gone, we can restore that buffer much faster than before. That is good. That is responsible. That is the right next step. But if I am honest, it is not the most exciting next step. And I think that is where the real lesson is, because sometimes the next faithful step is important, but boring. When things start getting better, it naturally makes you want to move faster. I think that is normal. When you have been under pressure for a long time, and then the pressure starts lifting, you start seeing possibilities again. You start thinking about the future differently. You start seeing goals that felt too far away before. A house deposit, investing, more margin, a stronger household, more family memories, more freedom, more options. And that is exciting. It should be exciting, because breathing room is a blessing. It is not wrong to feel hopeful when the situation improves. It is not wrong to feel excited when something finally shifts. But excitement can also create impatience, because once the future starts feeling possible again, part of you wants to rush toward it. You want the next thing, the next goal, the next milestone, the next visible sign that the journey is moving forward. And that is where I have to slow myself down. Because better does not mean ready. Better means there is progress. But ready means the foundation is strong enough to carry the next layer. And those are not always the same thing. The next step for us is rebuilding the emergency buffer. And I know that matters. I have seen that it matters. The buffer protected us. It helped us avoid debt. It kept real expenses from becoming a crisis. So I do not need convincing that the buffer is important. But I also have to be honest. Rebuilding the buffer does not feel as exciting as some of the other goals. It does not feel as exciting as preparing for a house deposit. It does not feel as exciting as investing. It does not feel as exciting as big future plans. It does not feel as emotional as family memories. It is just the buffer. Protection, stability, foundation. Important, yes, but not flashy. And I think that is why this step tests me in a different way. Because it is easy to value something when it feels urgent. It is easy to focus on something when pressure forces you to. But when the urgent pressure has dropped and the next step is not exciting, discipline has to become more mature. It has to choose what is wise, not only what feels motivating. This is the line I need to remember. Boring does not mean unimportant. Some of the most important parts of a financial rebuild are boring. Tracking spending can be boring. Checking the budget can be boring. Building a buffer can be boring. Rebuilding a buffer after using it can be boring. Repeating the same simple habits can be boring. But boring does not mean useless. Boring does not mean small. Boring does not mean optional. A foundation is not exciting to look at, but everything else depends on it. And the emergency buffer is part of the foundation. It is not there to impress anyone. It is not there to create a big emotional high. It is there to protect the household when life happens. And life does happen. Car expenses happen. Medical expenses happen. Unexpected costs happen. The things you did not plan for still arrive. And when they do, the boring buffer suddenly becomes very important. It becomes peace. It becomes protection. It becomes breathing room under pressure. So I cannot judge the value of the next step by how exciting it feels. The reason I want to rush past it is because the bigger goals are now visible. That is the honest part. When debt was still there, some goals felt far away. Not impossible, but far away. Now that the debt is gone, they feel closer. And because they feel closer, I want to move toward them. I want to think about the house deposit. I want to think about the next layer. I want to think about income growth. I want to think about long-term plans. I want to think about the bigger future. And none of that is wrong. Those things matter. But the danger is wanting the next season so badly that I skip the step that protects it. That is the temptation. Not rebellion, not irresponsibility in some obvious way, just impatience, a quiet desire to move past the boring part and get to the more exciting part. And I have to recognize that. Because if I do not recognize it, I can start making rushed decisions and call them progress. The foundation has to come first. That is the order. Protect first, then build. It does not matter how exciting the next dream is if the foundation is too thin, because progress without protection is fragile. I said that before, and I keep coming back to it. Progress without protection is fragile. A house deposit matters. Investing matters. Future planning matters. Income growth matters. But if one unexpected expense can pull everything backward, then the structure still needs strengthening. That is why rebuilding the buffer is not a delay. It is preparation. It is not standing still. It is strengthening the base. It is making sure that when we move toward the next goal, we are not doing it from a fragile place. That matters to me, because I do not want to build something that looks good for a short time, but cannot handle pressure. I want the next season to be stronger than the last one. And that means the foundation comes first. This stage requires a different kind of discipline. Before, the discipline was about surviving pressure, staying focused when things were tight, avoiding debt, tracking the month, making sure the household was protected. But now, the discipline is different. Now the test is staying faithful when things are better, staying focused when there is more room, staying disciplined when the next step does not feel urgent. That is a different challenge, because pressure can force discipline, but breathing room reveals discipline. When things are tight, the budget tells you what you cannot do. When things loosen up, you have to decide what you will not do yet. That is maturity, not because you cannot, but because you know the order matters. And I think that's the kind of discipline I need now. Not desperate discipline, not panic discipline, mature discipline, the kind that says this may not be exciting, but it is right. I have to trust the order. Protect first, then build. That sounds simple, but emotionally, it is not always easy. Because the exciting goals are louder, the bigger dreams are louder, the future plans are louder. The buffer is quiet. It just sits there. It doesn't shout. It doesn't feel impressive. It doesn't make the journey look dramatic. But it holds the household steady. And I have to respect that. I have to trust that God is not only in the exciting steps, He is also in the steady ones, the quiet ones, the responsible ones, the ones that do not look impressive but produce stability over time. That is part of stewardship too. Not only knowing what to build, but knowing what order to build it in. And right now, the order is clear. Restore the buffer, protect the breathing room, then move to the next layer. The boring step is still progress. That is the mindset shift, because it can feel like progress only counts when something visible changes. A debt disappears, a big goal starts, a new milestone gets reached, a big decision gets made. But sometimes, progress looks like putting protection back in place. Sometimes, progress looks like doing the obvious thing for a few months. Sometimes, progress looks like staying patient when the next step does not feel exciting. That still counts. Restoring the buffer is progress. Protecting the household is progress. Making the debt-free season less fragile is progress. Strengthening the foundation is progress. And maybe it is the kind of progress that future progress depends on, because if this step is skipped, the exciting goals become more risky. But if this step is done well, the next goals can be pursued with more peace. Better does not mean finished. That is another thing I need to keep in mind. We are debt-free, yes. That is a major milestone. There is breathing room, yes. That is a blessing. The situation is better, yes, but better is not the same as finished, and better is not the same as fully prepared. There is still work to do. There is still structure to build. There is still protection to restore. There are still habits to keep. There is still stewardship required. So I do not want to confuse relief with completion. Relief is good. Relief is a gift. But relief has to be handled well. Otherwise, the blessing can get wasted. And I do not want to waste the breathing room we prayed for. Sometimes the boring step is the step that protects every exciting goal that comes after it. That is the key for me. The buffer may not be the dream, but it protects the dream. It protects the house deposit. It protects future investing. It protects family plans. It protects the household from going backward when life happens. So even though this step feels less exciting, it still has a big purpose. It is not the final goal. It is the protection around the next goals. And when I see it that way, it becomes easier to accept. I am not rebuilding the buffer instead of building the future. I am rebuilding the buffer so the future can be built with more stability. That changes how I think about it. It makes the boring step feel less like delay and more like wisdom. We are in a better position now, and I am grateful for that. The debt is gone. The breathing room is real. The possibilities are starting to feel visible again. But better does not mean ready. The foundation still matters. And for us, the next faithful step is rebuilding the emergency buffer first. It may not be the most exciting step, but it is important. It protects the household. It strengthens the foundation. It makes the next season less fragile. And it gives the bigger goals something stronger to stand on. So I have to accept that the next step can be important and boring at the same time. And that is okay. Because boring does not mean unimportant. Sometimes the boring step is the step that protects every exciting goal that comes after it. I'm JP, and I'll see you in the next one.